Hi, I'm Selina from Annie's Bookshop of Worcester, and I'm here with Henry Lien, who is a speculative fiction, juvenile speculative fiction writer. Is that what you consider yourself?
Yes, that's just a fancy way to say science fiction and fantasy for kids without people thinking you have geek cooties.
Yeah, right. Okay. And actually, I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit more, and I would like you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your writing.
Sure. My name is Henry Lien, and I am an author originally from Taiwan, now living in Hollywood, California. And I am the author of the Peasprout Chen middle grade fantasy series, which is the story of a 14-year-old girl and her little brother who leave their homeland to come to a new country to study at a boarding school that teaches a very unusual sport, combining figure skating with kung fu. And the books were based on my own experiences at boarding school in New Hampshire.
Ah, interesting. So New England played a good part in your series.
It absolutely did. I live in Los Angeles now, and I'm from Taiwan, so I am from and now live in warm places. And going to New England for boarding school was like going to a new country. It was a very jarring experience, and it was very hard, and it was very wonderful, and it was very traumatic and very magical. It was traumagic, as I like to say. And New England has a very special place in my heart because of that experience at boarding school in New England. And I don't remember coming to America very well because I was young enough that it was fairly painless. Going to school in New England was much more difficult, felt more like going to a different country than coming to America did. It was far from painless, like actually coming from another country. And it made me realize how large and diverse America is. And that's very much in the Peasprout Chen books, the idea that no place is a monolith. No country is a monolith. There are many, many different ways of living in even one country. And learning those different ways of living, embracing them, and understanding that we are a very, very diverse place, even if we are one people, is an important life lesson that the main character, Peasprout Chen, learns.
Very interesting. Um, so, for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write, and what can readers really expect from your book?
Well, the New York Times actually said it better than I could say it. The New York Times described the Peasprout Chen books as Hermione Granger meets Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon meets The Ice Capades meets Mean Girls. And all of those elements are in there. It is a story. It is a story about a very willful, very talented young woman like Hermione Granger. It does have a lot of martial arts action, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It is also about ice skating, so that's why they referenced the Ice Capades, which was an ice show of former Olympic champions. And it's also about bullying, which is why they referenced the movie Mean Girls. So the New York Times quote really does summarize the plot in many ways, but it's also about some things that matter a lot to me. It's about immigration and the experience of coming to a new place, whether that be a new country or a new community or a new school. And they're also about kid power and girl power.
Just a quick question: why ice skating? Is that something very dear to you, or?
Well, it was. I mean, I believe in writing the book that gives you the most joy and that is the book that you want to read. And I got very into a number of things at the time I started writing these books. I got very sucked into Olympic coverage of figure skating. The way that Olympic coverage is set up, it's all about the human stories and that struggle for years and years and all that sacrifice coming down to 3 minutes of performance. It's super dramatic. So I got very sucked into ice skating because of that. And I also got very sucked into martial arts movies, particularly Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which rocked my world so hard, I still haven't gotten over it. And I love architecture. I've always loved architecture. So I wanted to create something that took these elements. Oh, and then boarding school. As I mentioned, I went to boarding school and it was the most formative, most unforgettable experience of my life. And I will never finish processing that experience. So I wanted to create a story that had figure skating and kung fu and architecture and boarding school, all mashed into one convenient place for my own reading pleasure. But when I came up with the idea, I realized I don't want this to be wacky. This sounds wacky. I don't like wacky. I don't do wacky. So I had to look for connections between these things. And I looked at kung fu and I looked at ice skating, and they seem like they're completely unrelated, but they're actually not, because they're both a combination of great athleticism and great grace. They are both a combination of art form and athletics. And something that I learned later on as I was researching was that they're all about balance and flexibility more than brute strength, which I'll get to later. There's a good story about that. But so I put these things together for my own amusement, but I realized that there were family resemblances between these things. And then I'm not a skateboarder, I'm not a figure skater, but one of the things I realized is that the surface of the environment is really important to skaters. Every skateboarder dreams of an entire city that they can skate on. Sidewalks with no cracks in the cement, a completely smooth surface. So I embraced my love of architecture by building this city that you can skate on, any surface, any handrail, any rooftop you can skate on, because the entire city is made out of this one continuous smooth substance that you can skate on. So I started to look at these things that I had just plucked out of the air and looked for natural connections and intersections between them.
That kind of brings me to another question. What kind of research went into writing the book? And
I'm so glad you asked that question, Selina.
yeah, and what's your favorite research story? And what kind of cool facts and findings didn't make it into the book, but you love discovering?
Okay, well, as research, I really believe in homework. I love homework. I love school, and I was an attorney for 10 years. So I do believe in doing my research. And I realize if I'm going to be writing about figure skating and kung fu, and I don't want to make it kind of cartoonish, I need to actually take figure skating and kung fu lessons. So I took 6 months of figure skating and kung fu lessons, and I was so appalling at both of these sports. In figure skating class, I was put in the beginner class, and most of the other students were 8 and 9 years old, almost all girls as well. And by the second class, they were all skating around me like minnows in water. And I could barely stay up on my skates. I was literally on my butt every single class. And it was freaky and frustrating because I said, look at these kids. I could bench press 5 of these kids. Why can I not do what they are doing? And the same thing was happening when I was researching Kung Fu and taking Kung Fu lessons. I was just as bad at Kung Fu as I was at figure skating. And I came into Kung Fu thinking, I'm a pretty fit guy. How hard can this be? Famous last words, how hard can this be? It was so hard. And I was paired with this 19-year-old woman who was about half of my weight. And we would be given exercises to do, and she would execute them flawlessly. And then I would say, I can do that. I can do that twice as hard as she can. And I would do it, and I would fall, and I would smash into the wall, and I tore my hamstring. I didn't know you could tear a hamstring. I tore my hamstring in class, and it was freaky and frustrating, and I didn't know what was happening. And then I had to step back a little bit, and what I realized is that I had picked these 2 sports out of the air because I thought it would be fun to mash them together. I have happened to pick 2 sports that reward balance and flexibility way more than brute strength. And so they are sports that actually reward the ways that kids and women are built differently from men. They might not have the ability to bench press what I can, but they are more flexible than I am. And that was more important. And they were more in touch with their center of gravity. Their sense of balance was much better than mine. That was much more important in figure skating and Kung Fu than being able to bench press 180 pounds. So I realized I was actually writing a book about kid power and girl power. And when I realized that, I had to swallow my pride and step back a bit and look at the idea of the world rewarding different abilities, the world rewarding the ways that we are built differently, the world rewarding difference. And that was a very humbling thing for me in particular, but the best possible thing for the book, to realize that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. So that's something that came out in the research. And it's not immediately apparent in the books because Peasprout is really good at this fictitious sport of Kung Fu figure skating. But she needs to learn a little bit of humility, like I had to learn. So that's how it is actually addressed in the Peasprout Chen books. There are some things that Peasprout is very, very good at, and there are some things that she's not so good at. And maybe she needs to just step back and back up and be quiet and learn from the other people that have contributions to make that are as important as hers. So that's what came from research for this book.
Interesting. Did you outline the book before you actually started writing it, or did you?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I believe in outlining certain types of books, and Peasprout Chen is structured as a mystery and a puzzle story. Now, the way that I started writing is that I was an attorney at the time, and I didn't have a close relationship with reading when I was young because I didn't have the curators and gatekeepers that could help lead me to the books that I would have really connected with. And so I left reading for many, many decades, and I came back to reading, especially kid lit, as an adult when I was an attorney, 40 years old. And the book that really blew my mind the most was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And it was because of the way that it was constructed. I won't spoil it in case there's anybody out there who actually hasn't read the book, but there is this running joke that Hermione's academic schedule is very, very busy. And there are all these things that you think it's signaling. You think, oh, this is just a running joke to show how ambitious she is. And then you think, oh, no, no, no. It's actually commenting on how she's more mature at this age than Harry and Ron are. And then you think, oh, no, no, no. This has to do with something regarding the Professor Lupin plot. She's investigating that. And all these different things that it seems like it has to do with. When you realize the real reason for Hermione's very packed academic schedule, and you roll back the book and you understand what she's been doing the entire time, it's like the floor just falls out from under you. And I looked at this book and said, how did J.K. Rowling do that? How did she construct that puzzle so well? How did she hide her tracks so well that it seemed like the story was making complete sense and was very satisfying, but they were all decoys for the real plot that was happening underneath. And when I saw that book, I said, okay, I don't know, I can't do what she did, but I want to. And the way that I started writing was I actually mapped out Prisoner of Azkaban chapter for chapter, looking at the different plot threads that were running through, and I kind of did a graph. And so I realized that I wanted to write that kind of story. The Peasprout Chen books have big plot twists as well, and I'm very proud of the plot twists. But to write that kind of a story and to also make it compelling so that people keep turning the pages requires a high level of choreography of the plot. And the only way I could do that was to outline it meticulously ahead of time so that I knew what was happening in every chapter, how long something disappears, how long before a plot thread comes back in, how long has it been since we've had an action sequence, how long has it been since we checked in with the bully at the school. So the architecture of the book had to be very precise because the plotting was very intricate, because I was trying to tell a puzzle mystery story. So the only way I could have written these books was by outlining them meticulously ahead of time.
Oh, that's excellent. So what was the inspiration for these books, and what were the steps that you took to bring it from initial inspiration to your finished book?
Well, I wanted to, when I read Prisoner of Azkaban, I knew that I wanted to write a Harry Potter of my own that did not mimic Harry Potter in any cosmetic way. So there's no magic in this fantasy. There are no wizards, there are no dragons, no witches, none of that. But I wanted to have something that felt as magical as that. So I looked at Kung Fu and figure skating. And also I looked at my own culture. I'm from Taiwan and I'm very proud of being from Taiwan. And so I wanted to show how athletics and culture and history could be as cool as any magic. And that's a pretty tall order of storytelling. And so that's what I was aiming for with that. But I also wanted something that really embraced my culture because I wanted to give kids of different backgrounds a Harry Potter of their own that had diversity and inclusivity baked into it from the outset. When I first came to America, I didn't. This was the 1970s, and I didn't have the teachers and the librarians and the booksellers that could lead me to books with characters that looked like me, which is usually a bad thing when you can't find a book that has anybody that looks like you. It's a bad thing for most kids, but it was the best possible thing for me because I was a very self-involved, um, overconfident, really selfish kid. And so to be forced to read books about characters that didn't look like me, didn't live like me, didn't come from my background was the best possible thing. And I would never have discovered a book like Little Women, my favorite book of childhood, if I didn't read outside of my own bubble and read characters that were different from me. So I wanted to write these books kind of as a thank you to America because America shared its books and its literature with me when I was a kid. And my childhood was so much richer because of that. And so these books are my way of saying, thank you. Here's a little bit of my culture as well.
Oh,
And what I did specifically to start writing was, as I said, I started by reading. I started by reading the Harry Potter books, and I mapped out Prisoner of Azkaban, and then I started building the world, building an encyclopedia about the world and its traditions and the sports themselves and the ways that they're different from our world. And I eventually went to a workshop in Seattle called Clarion West, where I studied under a number of famous adult science fiction and fantasy authors like George R. R. Martin, who wrote Game of Thrones, and they helped me hone my craft a bit. And then I wrote the novel, and I got an agent, and the agent sold it to Macmillan, and here I am.
great. Now, what was the biggest challenge in writing and putting out your books, and how did you overcome that challenge?
The biggest challenge, I'm going to be honest with you, Peasprout is a 14-year-old girl. I'm clearly not a 14-year-old girl, but Peasprout is very much me. She's a very strange combination of good qualities and bad qualities. She's brave and she's wildly talented, and she can have a big heart and be noble when she's not busy completely being selfish. And she's self-aggrandizing as well, and very boastful and very extreme. And she's on the one hand, disdainful of pure acceptance, but on the other hand, constantly fishing for pure acceptance. So she's a bit of a weirdo and rather lonely. And that's exactly how I am. And the hardest thing in writing this book was being honest about that, portraying Peasprout with all of my good points, the things that I am proud of, and all of my flaws. Being honest with that portrayal was the hardest thing because I knew that there would be some people who wouldn't like Peasprout because there are people who don't like me, and I understand that. And it was an act of self-acceptance to say, here I am, all of me, not just the good bits, all of me. And I know I am a work in progress, and I am not going to give you candy with this book. I'm going to give you something real. And hopefully you will understand a little bit more about how complex people are, and understand that we are eternally works in progress, hopefully moving in the right direction. But that was the hardest thing because I had all the power of an author to edit out the bad bits, but I didn't.
I think that's a great thing that you didn't. Yeah.
I think it's a better
Um,
book for that.
yeah, exactly. And what character did you love or hate the most when writing, and why?
Um, yeah, I'm very fond of all of the characters, but maybe my favorite is Peasprout's little brother, Cricket. And Cricket is a 13-year-old boy, and he's the opposite of Peasprout in many ways because Peasprout's loud and very confident of her contribution to any place that she goes. And Cricket is the opposite. He's cautious and he's observant and he says little, but he sees everything. And he sees some dangerous things in the world around them, in this new place around them, long before Peasprout does. And so Cricket is the opposite of me, but also a part of me that I really want to cultivate. And in fact, Cricket was based on my older sister. My older sister, when we were growing up, she did not suck up all the air in the room like I did. And she quietly observed things. And when she was asked, she would share the ideas that she had. And it took me decades to understand that her ideas, even though they were quiet, were just as good as mine, if not better. I was just too busy being loud to understand that. So Cricket is sort of my homage to my sister, and it's kind of my way to say, at long last, I see you, and I love you, and I'm sorry.
So, what draws you to the particular genre or style that you write, and what do you think draws readers to these kinds of books?
Well, I struggle with what kind of book this is. I guess it is fantasy, but it's fantasy that has no magic in it. What I think it is two things at heart. It is a puzzle mystery, and I think as just as human beings, as mammals, we are interested by things that are hidden. We are naturally curious, and the puzzle story appeals to that part of our mammalian brain to want to know what is hiding behind that wall, what is behind that curtain. And so I believe in I think mystery is very important in life. I hope that I never run out of mysteries to unravel and to discover in life. So I wanted to create a story that had a perpetual sense of discovery of good things and bad things and sobering things and joyous things. And that's part of the appeal of these puzzle mystery books. But the other thing is that it is very much a school story. Even though it doesn't have any wizards or any magic or any witches or any dragons, almost everybody comes away saying this feels like Harry Potter. And the reason for that is because it is a school story, specifically a boarding school story. There's something appealing about boarding schools, not just the romance of it and the prestige of it, but the idea that the children are only half monitored, so that they have to succeed or fail on their own to some extent because the parents aren't there every day. And boarding school is also filled with all sorts of rules and rituals, which can be very fun obstacles to try your strength against. And they're also very claustrophobic environments because everybody's stuck together and you never escape them, not even when you're sleeping. You're always there with your friends and your enemies. And that's just a great engine for generating all sorts of drama and stories. There's great storytelling potential in a boarding school setting because everybody's stuck together. It's like being on a ship at sea. And I think that that's part of the appeal of writing this particular type of book. When you are stuck with all of your friends and enemies, you get to know things about them that you might not if you can escape from them at the end of every day. So I think that that's the appeal.
Okay. And what is your favorite part of being a writer, and on the whole writing and publishing process? And what do you think has been your greatest lesson in your journey so far?
I love all of it. I mean, I love writing. I really, really have so much fun when I write. It has become clear to me that it is what I was put on this earth to do. I do it better than anything else I have ever done. So I love the actual writing process. But I also love going out and meeting with kids and doing bookstore events and school events. I love seeing the kids' reactions because I didn't have the happiest childhood when I was growing up, but being able to connect with kids through these books, it makes me realize it's never too late to have a happy childhood. So I love that part of it as well, doing events and meeting with the kids. And the kids are so smart. Um, I'm just so surprised at how many of the. Okay, I was a little bit concerned because the books are quite ambitious in terms of the world building and the language and the plots. And I was a little concerned when my publisher marketed them as middle grade. I thought, are you sure they can handle it? So they said, trust us, these kids can handle it. And my publisher was right, because the only people that have read the books in one sitting or 24 hours, and they are fairly long books, were 8 years old, third graders, which is even lower than the recommended age group for these books. So I love meeting with kids and connecting with the kids and asking them when they finished it, did you see the secret coming? Did you know the plot twist was coming? So I really love that part as well. It's just fun. And the middle age, the middle grade and middle school age group are really good for me because they can follow all the twists and the turns of this very complicated plot, and the story arcs are unusual. I mean, for example, this is not a story about a character finding her power and finding her self-confidence. Those are very important stories. This is not that story. This is the opposite. This is about a character that goes down in her sense of self, and why it's sometimes important to go down a little bit in your sense of self. And so these are unusual themes, even in adult literature. But the middle grade, middle school age group has been able to follow that completely fine. But on top of that, they're still young enough to enjoy and appreciate the humor in it, because it's super goofy, and like I am, and they're able to appreciate the importance of fun. Fun and play are really important. So it's just a really nice balance that I totally resonate with.
So what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
I would say spend a lot of time deciding on what story concept to write. Spend a lot of time on coming up with 20 concepts, and accept that you are going to reject 19 of them. And there's only going to be one that is the right story for you to write. And hopefully that story will be personal and unique and something that we have not seen before. Because if you do that, then you're not competing with all the other stories that are about that subject matter. And I had many stories inside me that I wanted to write. This was the one that I chose to write because it was the one I had truly never seen before. I had never seen a Kung Fu figure skating boarding school story based on Taiwanese culture before. I've never seen that story before, but because I chose that particular story, I wasn't competing with anybody else. There's nobody else doing this. And that's incredibly liberating, to understand you are only competing with yourself. It kind of bypasses any kind of imposter syndrome you might encounter, because you are in your own lane. Nobody else is in that lane. Nobody else is racing you. You are just going at your own pace and only trying to best your past record. It's really freeing to choose something that only you could write.
Hmm. And what question do you wish interviewers would ask you? And what would your answer be?
I wish interviewers would ask me about video games and the connection with video games. So would you please ask me about video games, Selina?
Okay. What significance do video games have in your life?
I'm so glad you've asked that question, because nobody ever asked that question of me. I love video games, and I will defend them against people that malign them. I think video games, particular types of video games, adventure and puzzle and role-playing games, are as nutritious and give your brain as much exercise as any book could. And one of the reasons why I love video games is I love solving puzzles, and there are so many incredible, ingenious puzzles in video games, and so I wanted to create something that gave you that sense of satisfaction, because it's very difficult to make a good puzzle that is where the answer always feels just out of reach until you get it, and then the moment after you get it, the book or the game reveals it to you. That's a very difficult balancing act. So that's something that I tried to capture in the Peasprout Chen books. There are constant puzzles in the world, and that she has to unravel. And so I wanted to capture that sense. But even more than that, I wanted to capture the sense of place in video games. I'm a big fan of the Legend of Zelda series, and I can imagine there are probably some kids out there that are squealing right now. I love the Legend of Zelda series, in part because of the sense of place that they create. When you spend an hour in a Zelda game, you feel so transported. The illusion of this other place is so powerful that when you look away from the screen, it takes a second for you to reorient and realize that you don't live in that world. And I understood when I was writing books for children that I am competing with Nintendo and Fortnite and all of those things. So why not just, instead of trying to fight them, why not join them? Why not create something that has those same virtues? So it became very clear to me that I had to create a powerful sense of place with these books. And that's why I came up with this world and also this particular school, Pearl Famous Academy of Skate and Sword, which is like a kung fu figure skating amusement park. I wanted to create a sense of place like as a Legend of Zelda video game, so that when you put the book down, it takes you a moment to realize that's not a place that I've been. If that's not where I was for the last hour, that place doesn't even exist, but it feels as real now as the house where I grew up, my first school. That place feels so real because it has been well imagined. So that's the connection between the Peasprout Chen books and video games. I wanted to capture the sense of mystery that good puzzles can engender, but I also wanted to create a powerful sense of place.
Wow. So what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, I am working on the third Peasprout Chen book, and there's some other news regarding the Peasprout Chen series, which I cannot share publicly yet, but there's a lot more Peasprout Chen coming. I'm also working on a standalone novel, a contemporary STEM-based novel about communication with dolphins. So that is my next book. And then after that will be the third Peasprout Chen book.
Interesting. So a few other questions that don't really have much to do exactly with Peasprout Chen. What are your passions when you're not writing, and how do you make time for your non-writing hobbies and things you love?
Yeah, I love music. Music is very important to me, and the way that I make time for music, even though I am so busy with writing, is that I write songs for my books. All my books have songs that go with them, and they have an important role to play in the plot of every book. So that's one way I keep music in my life, even though I am inundated with responsibilities regarding writing.
Oh, could you have a song that you could perform for us?
I do have a song. I'm so glad that you asked me. This song is the theme song from the first Peasprout Chen book. It's called the Pearly and New Year's Song. And at my book launch, a famous singer and actress named Idina Menzel sang it. If you don't know her name, she was the star of Frozen and Frozen 2. She played Elsa, sang Let It Go, and also the star of Wicked and Glee and Rent. And so she performed this song at my book launch. So that's a pretty tough act to follow. And on top of that, this instrument is called a sanshin in Japanese or sanxian in Mandarin. And I did not know that just a couple of years ago because I had never played a sanshin or a guitar or any other string instrument. But I wanted to learn how to play it well enough to perform for kids because I wanted to show kids that it's more important to be enthusiastic than to be perfect. So that's just my long way of saying this is not going to be very good. So please go easy.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a theme song from the first Peasprout Chen book. It's called the Pearly and New Year Song. If I learned just one thing, then the year has not been wasted. If I traded one illusion for a revelation, if I kept just one friend, then the year has not been wasted. May we meet here in the new year. May we meet here in the new year. May we meet here in the new year. May we meet here in Pearl. May we meet here in Pearl. May we meet here in Pearl.
Very good. I like it.
Thank you.
That was very nice.
Thank you.
So, wow. So, what are some of your writing related hobbies, crafts, addictions?
Well, I really like choosing a location that is inspiring. So I live in Los Angeles. I live in Hollywood, and I live just 2 subway stops from Universal Studios. So before the pandemic, I used to just hop on the subway and go to Universal Studios where I got a season pass, and I would go to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and I would use the three broomsticks in Hogsmeade Village as my writing cafe, which is an incredibly inspiring place to write. And after the pandemic and Universal Studios closed for now, I started going to a place called the Huntington Library and Gardens because they have one of the most beautiful Chinese gardens in the world. And people, including my parents who have been to the original gardens in Suzhou that the Huntington Library's gardens are based on, say that the Huntington's gardens are more beautiful than the original inspiration. So I really like choosing a location that is inspiring to me because as I said, I do want to invoke a powerful sense of place. So choosing an environment that inspires me, especially as a fantasy writer, is very important, and one of the fun things that I get to post about on Instagram.
Okay. So then my next question, you kind of answered a little bit of it, but what does your writing space look like, and what do you need to have around you while writing or editing?
Well, my writing space normally is at home. About half the time I write at home, and I rescued these 2 little conures who are little parrots, and I let them fly around the house free because I've got 18-foot ceilings, and it just seemed very wrong to cage something that can fly. So they're flying around all the time, and it's very, very cute because since I rescued them, they know I saved their butts, and they are very bonded to me. And so they're all over me all the time. And it's pretty comical because I write on an iPad, which has a touch screen, and the birds will come up onto the iPad and look down at my screen to see what I'm doing. And they have learned that the touch screen responds to their tongues. And they'll want to lick anything with a color. And unfortunately, one of the things that has a color is the send button on an email. So I'm constantly typing an email, and one of the birds will go, and send the email before I'm ready to send it off. But it is fun to have these little kooky, funny little dinosaurs climbing all over me and interrupting my work. It keeps the play in the writing process. But when I've had enough of dinosaurs climbing all over me and emails getting sent before I'm ready to send them, I do like to go out and vary my environment by going to places like the Three Broomsticks or the Huntington Library and Gardens.
Well, you kind of answered another question, which was that writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions to help them through their work, and how do they help or not help you with your writing? You just kind of answered that.
Well, I mean, I think that's a really good question because so many writers, we do live solitary lives, and to have animal companions is wonderful. And the animals love having you around. One of the really hard things for an animal is to be alone because most animals that we keep as pets, we keep them as pets because they are social creatures. They like companionship. So to not have somebody around all day long because everybody's at school or work is hard on the animal. and they love it when you are around. So to just get that constant appreciation, somebody who's just happy when you walk into the room, that is great. But also on top of that, I actually draw from my birds, and I believe that writers don't just make stuff up, they observe things in the world around them and look for connections that other people might not see. That's part of the contribution of a writer as well. So when I was creating the Peasprout Chen books, my birds are actually in the Peasprout Chen books. If you've read them, you know there's the flock of birds that deliver the headlines. And I wanted to create a world where everything was different from our world. Even the way that they deliver advertising, billboards, and newspaper headlines, I wanted it to be very, very different. So when I started writing these books, I had adopted these two little birds, and because they were so bonded to me because I had saved them, they follow me everywhere. And my living room has very tall ceilings. It's got 18-foot ceilings. And so they would, when I would walk from one end of the house to the other, they would follow me in the sky above me. And I thought, wait a minute, what if they could be trained to fly in a certain pattern by just following somebody on the ground? So what I imagined was, in this world of Peasprout Chen, the way that they deliver their advertisements is that somebody skates a pattern on the ground that's like handwriting. And there's a flock of birds in the sky above them that's following around like a trail of ink. And because they're high up, everybody can see them like a billboard. And so my birds following me around the house because they were so neurotically attached to me actually ended up being inspiration for something that was in the book. So, I mean, I think that with everybody working at home or going to school at home, we need to look at the things around us that can actually benefit what we are doing. That is not just a distraction, that can actually add to what we are doing. So that's an example of how working with these pets that are all over me and demanding my attention actually helped my writing.
Mhm. So, what is the one thing that most people don't realize about you?
Um, I'm actually a very shy person. Uh, I was a fat nerd growing up, and I was bullied, and and I don't present as a shy person, but I am super, super shy, which is why I love Zoom meetings, because I can just be one-on-one and I can just pretend I'm talking to one person, which really helps. And I know that I like people, and I think I try to be a kind person and to be a good listener. And because of that, I don't come across as shy, because when I'm talking to somebody, I am just thinking about what they're saying and really trying to listen. And so people think, oh, well, Henry's a super, super friendly, gregarious person. And it's not true. It's just that I am really listening to what people are saying, that they get that impression that I'm actually a very social person. I'm not. I get very shy in a crowd. And so that's something that most people don't realize, that the good listeners and the sensitive people around you, you feel a connection with them. And that's great because they love that connection too. But it doesn't mean that they're not shy. I'm super, super shy.
Yeah, you don't seem it, like you
I
said.
know, because we're just one-on-one. I can't see anybody else
Yeah.
out there.
So, what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Favorite adventure? This is going to sound conceited, but really it was just going into this world. I mean, so much of it has been so great. I've met so many incredible people and had such wonderful experiences as a writer, and meeting all these kids and going around the country and doing these performances has been wonderful. But the best thing of all was going into this world of Peasprout Chen, and going to Pearl Famous Academy of Skate and Sword. This was the happy childhood I never got to have. In some ways, it's not a perfect place, but it is a place that has so much warmth for me. And so to be able to return to that place again and again, to have spent so much time in my mind in this place that it feels as real as my own childhood was at this point, that's kind of a way to embrace myself. That little kid inside me that didn't have the happy childhood, he's got it now. And so that's been the best adventure so far, to be able to go back and have that and go into that world whenever I want to.
Great. And while you're writing, do you prefer music, silence, or what?
Yeah, I cannot have music, I cannot have words. They will end up in the book if they're around. The only thing that I can have is animal sounds.
As
Animal sounds.
animal sounds.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have any favorite foods or drinks that must be in the vicinity with you or must be avoided while you're writing or editing a piece of work?
Nope, I'm not a snacker. I've never been a snacker. When I am writing, I'm very, very focused. I do like to have a lot of herbal tea handy, but just because otherwise I will forget to hydrate. But I don't need to have that supplement to my process. When I'm there, I am completely nourished by just the writing and being in that world.
Yeah, it's a good idea to keep hydrated. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
And what do you consider the most challenging part of the writing process, and how do you overcome that?
Um, Being careful not to soak up things from the world around me, from no, not the world around me, from other stories around me. It is very easy to fall into instinctive or knee-jerk ways to tell a story. And I want very much not to be telling a story that everybody else is telling. As I said, the Peasprout Chen books are not about finding your power and finding your self-esteem, because there are plenty of books that do that really, really well. So for me, the hardest part is just closing my eyes and closing out the world, and asking myself, what contribution do you have to make that nobody else has made? Oh, not nobody else. That's so conceited to say that. What contribution do I have to make that is not just following what everybody else is making? That is always the thing that I need to remind myself every hour of the day. What are you doing? What contribution are you making that is unique to you as a writer? So that is the most difficult thing. It is very hard when you grow up with certain types of stories to not just tell those types of stories, to tell for the writers out there, the Western 3-act or 5-act Freytag pyramid structure, the Save the Cat structure. It's very hard not to tell those stories. It's very hard not for every story not to turn into a self-esteem, rising empowerment arc. It's very hard not to tell those stories. There are plenty of those stories, very, very good ones, and they are important stories to tell. I want to show that it's not the only game in town, and I want to tell the stories that are not being told.
Mhm. Okay. And what is the greatest lesson you've learned so far in your writing career?
That is a really, really important question. And as I said before, writing the character of Peasprout Chen was an uncomfortable experience, because I tried to make her as honest a depiction of my own virtues and flaws as possible. But one of the things that Peasprout learns is that, yes, Peasprout is very special. And we talk a lot about being special, and we tell kids that they are special. And it's very important to tell them they are special. But I think that we are using the wrong word. I think sometimes when you tell kids they are special, they automatically assume that that means that they will be distinguished in public, that they will get acclaim in public, that they will be number one at something, that they will be first pick on the team, that they will get the lead in the school play. All of these ways that show that somebody is special, but not every kid will ever have that. And so using that word special kind of sets up a wrong expectation. I think what we're trying to say when we say you are special is you are valued. And that includes the kids that are quiet, the kids that are not going to be the lead in the school play or the first pick on the team. And so one of the lessons that Peasprout learns is, yes, Peasprout is very undeniably special, but it's more important to be good than it is to be special. And that's so important. I'm going to say it again for you. It's more important to be good than it is to be special. So that is the most important thing that I have learned from writing these books, and the most important thing that Peasprout herself has learned.
Wow. Okay. That's very, very important.
Yeah,
I really
thank you for feeling that.
think that I do. I do. I feel that a lot. Um, are there any groups or clubs or organizations that you'd recommend to other writers that have helped you out in the past?
Yes, for me, I went to a writer's workshop called Clarion West in Seattle, and it was absolutely the most important 6 weeks of my life. It made me as a writer, and I would not be here now, and you would not be here now, and all these people would not be here now because I wouldn't have written these books were it not for my experience at Clarion West. But Clarion West is a very selective writers' workshop, and not everybody will be able to attend Clarion West. And one thing that almost every writer can do is that if they are writing for children and they have questions about the craft and the business of writing, the best thing you can do is to join the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI. Every question that you can possibly have has already been answered by that organization in their boards, their discussion groups, their written materials, their conferences. It is the best resource for emerging children's lit writers, SCBWI.
Right. Okay, and just a couple of more quick questions. I want to get a little plug actually for Annie's Bookstop of Worcester. And I just wanted to say that you can get, anybody can get your books through Annie's Bookstop of Worcester. We're at 65 James Street in Worcester, Massachusetts. And you can order Henry's books by sending an email to orders@anniesbooksworcester.com, and we do curbside delivery, and also we send books out. We mail books out. So if you don't have to come into the store, so you can get them from anywhere. It's a great bookstore, so you can get any books at all actually from the bookstore. So my question to you also is, where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester?
You can find me on social media under the handle @Henry Lien Author, HenryLien author, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I'm a friendly guy, so connect with me. You can also go to my website, which is www.henrylien.com, and click on the Connect page and subscribe to my newsletter. The newsletter often does have some nice freebies, including free stories and songs, so sign up if you'd like to be connected.
That sounds great. I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was really wonderful. I enjoyed the song. I thought that was great. And
thank you.
Yeah. And so thanks very much. And hope to to read your books and read the next ones that are coming out. So
thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we will see you again.
Okay, thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Keep reading.
We will. Thank you.